Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. Well, got up this morning, made some coffee, sat down at our breakfast bar and opened up my iPad to just catch up on some news and browse articles. And I saw this article on PetaPixel and it was titled, "The L-Mount Desperately Needs a Great Everyday Photography Camera." And I don't take issue with that. I think that's quite true. I take issue with a couple of statements in this article that I don't know why anybody would say either one of them. First statement, the S5 Mark II and the S9 are not particularly good photography cameras. Half of that's true, okay? But if you're lumping the S9 and the S5 Mark II together and saying that, they're totally different cameras, except for a few things. They're aimed at totally different end users. The S9 is aimed at people who want to, produce content fairly quickly. That's where that real-time LUT first came in. They want to, burn that LUT in and be able to upload to whatever platform they're putting that video on. And so it's got all, it's got all the video codecs, and you can do 10-bit. And it's got the MP4 Lite. 3.8K MP4 Lite available, and so that's but as a photography camera, yeah, that's not a great photography camera. It lacks things that I think are essential. No mechanical shutter, electronic shutter. That means for photography, certain artificial lighting is going to cause banding, because the lights are a 650 or 60 hertz circuit. They actually are brightening and dimming, right? So in that amount of time. No hot shoe. So there's a whole gamut of photography you can't do with a camera that can't sync to a flash, right? No viewfinder. That may or may not be an issue to some folks. It's a problem for me. I want a viewfinder. So yeah, that's geared towards video. The S5 Mark II, on the other hand, although it shares, the sensor, it shares the in-body image stabilization, I imagine, shares the mount, obviously, and it has all those video goodies, but loading up a camera that actually, obviously, is also for photographers, because it has a viewfinder, it has a mechanical shutter, it has a hot shoe, loading all those video things into there does not negate its being a good photography camera. I think it's a good, possibly great photography camera. I use mine all the time. People are probably sick of hearing me talk about the S5 Mark II in my photojournalism. But to say that it's not a great photography camera, I think is probably not accurate. I mean, I have never had an issue with this camera. I haven't had a problem with the autofocus that people still harp about. It's phase detect, but people say, well, it's not as good as Canon and Sony. Well, it's probably not as good as Canon and Sony, but it's still pretty damn good. And from comments I see, it's better than Fuji, but I never see anybody giving Fuji a hard time about their autofocus. So that, I believe, is a little silly. Now, the other thing. There's another statement in the article I take issue with, and that is there's a statement about Sigma, which is a member of the L-Mount Alliance, and says no camera today takes full advantage of Sigma lenses. That doesn't make any sense. What do they mean by that? The article doesn't say. I mean, I'd like to see, okay, how so? It's not there. And being a member of the L-Mount Alliance means that Sigma shares lens data with the other members of the L-Mount Alliance, which is why when you put a Sigma lens onto a Lumix body or a Leica body, all of that correction information is provided to those manufacturers so that the camera can correct for things like distortion and chromatic aberration and so on. And I've even seen reviewers like with the 20 to 200 millimeter Sigma lens that I am now using a whole lot. And they use it on a Tamron body and they're seeing like chromatic aberration and other things. And I'm wondering, is Tamron fully correcting for those issues that a lens like that's probably going to have, going from 20 millimeters to 200 millimeters? Whereas on my S5 Mark II, I don't see any chromatic aberration, and I don't see any distortion, even at 20 millimeters. I think it's all corrected for in camera. Hey. Okay, I have a cat issue. So our younger cat, Rex, likes to play. And T-Bone, the older cat, my cat, who is now 14, he's not so much into playing anymore. And Rex just came up and started hassling T-Bone. So anyway, sorry about that. So, when you read these articles, I think you got to take some things with a grain of salt. Because neither of those things, I think, are true. The overall gist of the article, I think, makes some good points. I do think that Lumix maybe should come out with, I don't know, what number could they use? An S7? And use the S9 as a basis for it, but give it a mechanical shutter, give it a viewfinder, give it a hot shoe, give it basic video ability. So, because I think photographers still are going to want to use video. There are some real hardcore, I don't want video at all on my camera, but it's very useful. As a photojournalist, I use it because sometimes when I'm working on a story, I use it for note-taking. And especially if a reporter can't cover the story. That happens. And we rely on we have staff reporters, but we also have freelancers. Sometimes I go to cover a story and there's no reporter available to cover it. So what I do is I use my S5 and I get information from people at that event or whatever I'm covering with their names and a little spiel about whatever it is the story is going to be about, so that I can pass that on to the reporters to actually put a story together. So I think, even if you're a hobbyist and you're out and you see something that video works for rather than still, I think you still want to have that ability. You may not want to have all of those video codecs or log or anything like that. I mean, I shoot in natural profile. I don't shoot in log. And have to do minimal tweaks to the natural profile. So I think most hobbyist photographers would be fine with that. So you could delete all those pages and pages in the menu of video codecs, and you would have a nice, compact, unobtrusive camera for, say, street photography, if you based it on the S9. And as far as Micro Four Thirds is concerned, I really think Lumix has got to come out with a couple of new lenses maybe, and maybe an updated camera, like an updated GX9 with the 25 megapixel sensor from the G9 Mark II and GH7. But again, keep that video side of it kind of pared down. And offer those things at a price that's going to be really attractive. So that you have an entry. On the L-mount side, you have an entry like the Canon R8 to get into the L-mount, because there are a lot of great lenses available for L-mount because it's pretty much an open mount. So those are my thoughts on this. Any questions, comments, leave them down below. If you can have something to add, feel free to do it. If this was interesting or useful, pop the like button. I'm Todd Banner. I'll see you in the next video.